Welcome. Thank you for coming. Before we go into anything else, let's ask Father Michael Stewart to do the honors of prayers.
I ask your reverence at this time as we pray. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his love endures forever. Let the sons of Israel say, his love endures forever. Let all Vincentians say, God's love endures forever. Lord God, we express our gratitude to you today as we anticipate another anniversary of national independence. We thank you for this land, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, for its peoples, and for its dreams and aspirations. We thank you for our government and all those who hold and administer public office and those in private enterprise. We thank you for those whose task it is to chart the way forward for present and future generations. And we pray today that in all our undertakings, we may acknowledge your lordship and genius and avail ourselves to the guidance you so graciously offer to mankind. Moreover, we pray today that as the National Economic and Social Development Plan 2013-2025 is launched, that we may humbly submit our vision to the dictates of your will and your kingdom's reign, and that all that will be undertaken will be done for your greatest glory, for the good and well-being and the integral development of every Vincentian, irrespective of color, race, class, belief, or political party, and indeed all persons of goodwill. We ask all these mercies through Christ Jesus our Lord.
Thank you, Father Stewart. Please remain standing for the national anthem of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
St. Vincent, land so beautiful, with joyful hearts we pledge to thee our loyalty and love, and vow to keep you ever free. Whatever future brings, our faith will see us through. May peace reign from shore to shore, and God bless and keep us true. High Roon, our fair and blessed eyes, your mountains high so clear, and green our home to me. Though I may stray, a heaven come serene. Whatever future brings, our faith will see us through. May peace reign from shore to shore, and God bless and keep us true. little sister islands are those gems, the lovely grenadines upon their seas and golden suns, the sunshine ever beams. Whatever future brings, our faith will see us through. May peace reign from shore to shore, and God bless and keep us true.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bernadette. I'm sure you're all happy for the opportunity to try your voices out before Sunday, when we celebrate our 34th anniversary of independence. I'd like to welcome Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves to the head table. Prime Minister Gonsalves, members of Cabinet, Sir Dwight Venner of the ECCB, Mr. Wayne Mitchell, IMF Resident Rep in ECCB countries, Dr. Clement Curtin, Consultant, Dr. Carla Barnett, Vice President of the CDB, Dr. Justin Ram, Director of the Projects Division of the CDB, Dr. Patrick Kendall, CDB's Economist, members of the Diplomatic Corps, senior civil servants, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you officially to the launch of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines National Economic and Social Development Plan 2013 to 2025. Indeed, a plan which has been in the making for some time, and a plan which has canvassed the views of Vincentians at home and abroad, along with other very key stakeholders in this country and in the region. Just like to say at the moment that we're coming live on NBC Radio, and we're also streaming live on www.gov.vc, and this is for listeners at home if you want to connect to the internet to get these proceedings. I'd like also to convey congratulations on behalf of Mr. Michael Barford of the EU delegation to Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. Mr. Barford congratulates the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and wishes all the best in today's exercise. We have also greetings from the OECS Secretariat in St. Lucia, and the representative, who was supposed to have been here, Mr. Roger Sommer, has been delayed at the airport at St. Lucia. We also have greetings from Dr. Wendell Samuel of Vincentian, Deputy Division Chief at the IMF, and he has worked as a consultant in the initial stages of this plan. We now, ladies and gentlemen, go back to our program, and for an overview of the project itself, the entire exercise, we have the Director of Planning. The Department of Planning has been playing an integral part in the putting together of this plan, and it is fitting that we ask Mrs. Laura Anthony Brown, Director, to bring some remarks. Mrs. Brown.
Thank you very much, Jimmy, our chairperson. I will adopt the established protocol, Honorable Prime Minister and the head table, the members of Cabinet, and other parliamentarians, our guests, Diplomatic Corps, our guests from CDB, and all invitees and all members present. I greet you very warmly this morning. Had this been a different audience, the way I am feeling right now, I would have invited you to join me in singing Andre Crouch's I'm Gonna Keep On Singing, I'm Gonna Keep On Praising, I'm Gonna Keep On Lifting My Voice to let the world know Jesus saves. But you don't have to be worried. I'm not about to preach you my next Sunday morning sermon. I just wanted to say, though, that the obstacles, the processes involved in the development and production of this plan, everything that happened left me in no doubt that God is indeed powerful and to be praised. The members of staff of the Central Planning Division have prepared for me a comprehensive PowerPoint presentation, but they know I have a tendency to be palinish. Do you know what that means? If I say I have a tendency to be palinish. So I, I will go rogue and just say, that, and also when I looked at the program, I wanted to just stay for a while on the slides which they have presented. There is one particular slide which I would have stayed on quite a bit, and it's already at the back of your program. So it justifies my decision not to go through the slides as the staff have prepared them. But just to say, though, that the process, as Jimmy has indicated, it took quite a while. Some of you may remember the date when we launched on January 22nd. I wouldn't tell you the year. You can figure that out for yourself. And we launched the process of undertaking this plan for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I can tell you, though, that the plan covers the period 2013 to 2025. It outlines the long-term and medium-term strategies for our country. It offers a vision for improving the quality of life for all Vincentians, and it is anchored on the achievement of the following superarching goals: high and sustained levels of economic growth, reduced unemployment and poverty levels, improved physical infrastructure and environmental sustainability, high levels of human and social development, a peaceful, safe, and secure nation, a technologically advanced workforce, a deep sense of national pride and cultural renaissance, and regional integration. This plan, which we have crafted, it envisages that the private sector and the civil society will join hands with the government to achieve this economic transformation that we envisaged. The methodology that we used to arrive at the plan was highly participatory, and the consultations were held throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines and with Vincentians in major regional and international cities. This plan envisages the continued development and strengthening of our national institutions and the improvement of technical and administrative capacity with the threats which we know exist worldwide in order to capitalize on the opportunities that are presented. And then we drilled down, having gotten those 8 superarching goals and the consultations, and based on the collective distillation of the views from all of the people with whom we consulted, we drilled down to 5 strategic goals. And these are the ones which you have in the back: re-engineering economic growth, promoting good governance and increasing the effectiveness of public administration, thereby enabling increased human and social development, improving the physical infrastructure, preserving the environment and building resilience to climate change, improving and building national pride, identity, and culture. With the successful implementation of these strategies and these 5 goals, it is projected that there would be reduced poverty in our country. We are already doing a fairly good job in our estimation in that regard, because we have significantly cut poverty levels, levels of indigence from in 1997-99, that last report, from 37% down. Indigent levels moved from 25 point something percent to 2.9%. and levels of poverty are still generally high, but we expect to achieve significant decreases in this regard. While we have not developed a financing plan for the entire period, we have identified that over the next 3 years, including this year of 2013, we would spend about $700 million East Caribbean dollars in capital expenditures if we were to achieve the targets that we have set for ourselves. I want to tell you that crafting this plan was quite a journey. But as we kept going, I was indeed inspired by reading the autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, of Nelson Mandela, the beloved international icon, who ends his book with these words: "I have made mistakes along the way, but I have discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. I have taken a moment here to rest, to steal a view of the glorious vista that surrounds me, to look back on the distance that I have come. But I can rest only for a moment, for with freedom comes responsibilities, and I dare not linger, for my walk is not yet ended." So I was inspired always by those words. And so you would permit me, I believe, ladies and gentlemen, to speak directly to the staff of the Central Planning Division within the Ministry of Finance at this point. You have traveled a long journey. You have walked far, a great distance. So you are entitled now, today, October 25th, like Nelson Mandela, to take a rest, but only for a while. Enjoy the view, enjoy the distance that you have traveled, because, quite honestly, the journey has only now begun. We have come to one hill, and there are many more hills to climb. So, for all of us, and I want to especially remember at this point, and well, I'm not doing the vote of thanks, but to thank Beresford George, who is no longer with us, but who started with us in this process, and also Dr. Anki Scott Joseph, who is also left. So I include them at this point, and also 2 other members of our team who are still on team but not here today, Decima Correa and Ronette Jordan. So I want to tell you that while we continue, it is really not so much of a difficult journey that we will travel. And I would use some words from the late Razum Shallow, because we know where there is no vision, the people will perish. Where there's no love, we are left in despair. We ought not to wage war, he didn't exactly put it that way, but for the purposes of today, against brother, trample our own sisters in our quest to make life easier. Because, says Shallow, if we have to advance, and if this nation, which we all love, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, has to advance, we must all come together. If we are going to succeed, we have to unite. Records can be broken, robes of gold can be won, but the strains of life will intensify unless we, the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, get up and fight. Let us therefore take seriously what Shallow urges us to do. Let us fight on, take a rapid flight, work hard day and night, because if we want to hope for a brighter future, we must do what? Fight on. Fight on honestly. Fight for you and me. For the sick and the weak and the helpless, they are the needy. Fight on. Stop the complaining. Fight on, every family. Let us take it seriously. Laziness and crime, continues Shallow, go together. Rougher times in the jail follow after. Time wasting is a crime. So our collective talents, we, the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we must employ all our collective talents. We must put aside grudge and selfishness. Says Shallow, we must destroy. This time, we have crafted a plan which we believe can take us further into advancement, which can create the kind of growth which can lift our people and improve the livelihoods of all Vincentians. But we have to work together. We have to create a future for every boy, every girl, every man, every woman this time. This plan can work, but we must work together to implement it, to raise the funds that we need. We need all hands on deck. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Anthony Brown. And regardless of your definition of paling, I think you were rather profound. I now invite Mr. Wayne Mitchell, who is the resident IMF representative for the ECCU countries, to address us.
Thank you. Morning, Mr. Prime Minister. Members of the head table, all protocols observed. Let me make a few brief remarks. A colleague of mine, and more importantly, a Vincentian, once said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And I think St. Vincent's National Economic and Social Development Plan strikes to make a significant departure from that sentiment. So I commend you, Mr. Prime Minister, and your team for putting together this national plan. One important thing I think about a plan, if you look across a number of countries that have tried to do so in the last couple of years, and I raise this in the context of an exercise that I did for the Minister of Finance in Antigua a couple of weeks ago, where we discussed the issue of setting a vision of where a country should direct its attention, its national aspirations. And part of that exercise was going around looking at who else had done plans. And it's surprising. Kosovo, which is a post-conflict country, Israel, Singapore, Saskatchewan, which is a province in Canada, Minnesota in the US, quite a few entities do plans. And it's not unsurprising, really, because business people, companies, also have to do plans. And it's, I guess, in that ethos that countries should do the same. One other notable point that I find extremely striking is a comment made by the Prime Minister of Greece, maybe about 2 or 3 days ago, where in lamenting about the difficulties of, and I dare say, going through a structural adjustment program with the IMF, he also pointed out that one of the mistakes Greece made was in the post-ascension to the euro, that they never established a national plan. And so a lot of the problems that they're going through now, in his view, demonstrates that lack of vision, that lack of purposefulness of how to take the country forward. So for me, it's striking that given the global crisis that has beset all of us, and in particular those of us in the Eastern Caribbean that have experienced serious negative or economic contraction over the last couple of years, that we have a few countries, St. Vincent being one of them, that has undertaken will and commitment to gather stakeholders both within St. Vincent and outside St. Vincent, I guess, in the diaspora, as one would say, to put together a framework that embodies their sense of national purpose, their sense of national pride, and a commitment to the future. So with these very few brief remarks, I'd like to thank Prime Minister and Laura, and to salute you, commend you for this achievement, and wish you well as you aspire to meet your national aspirations and objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you very much. It is not often that we thank the IMF when they speak to us. In this case, I think we are in order. The Governor of the Central Bank, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Mr. Dwight Venner. Sir Dwight Venner is here with us also, and we now invite him to the podium as one of the featured addresses here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Prime Minister, colleagues at the health table, friends all. Mr. Chair, you know that there cannot be two feature addresses at an arrangement like this, so I always defer to my brother, the Prime Minister. I'm very pleased to be here at this time and in this place. In the last 2 weeks, given the nature of my job, I've had to go to similar occasions in St. Lucia and St. Kitts and Nevis, and now here today. It's part of my constituency. So I always say that I speak philosophically, regionally, realistically, and practically. But in this case, I also have to speak personally, because I am from this place. This has been a very interesting time. I should not have been here. I should have been far away. But then I decided that I could not, Prime Minister, but be here. And it has been quite an interesting day so far. I got up early this morning, walked through the market, walked down back street, stood in front of my house, and redeclared possession. A gentleman came up to me and he said, you know, some time ago they were cleaning out this house and there was a lot of stuff there, so I followed it to the dump. He said, there I found a lot of things of the history of your family, including the letters you had written to your wife when she was staying here, and you were away. I think I was in Mexico. He said, but I did not open them. Keep the privacy.
And you believe that?
I believe that. I believe it. I believe it. I believe that. Yeah. So he says that, you know, we have to keep the history of these countries together. And Prime Minister, I must say I'm very happy with the work you're doing. The National Museum, the library, all of those things are very important to us. When I got back to the hotel, lo and behold, it was my lifelong friend Clement Curtin. Didn't know he was there, so I know that the comrade had engineered these things, these reunions, out of nowhere. So we're very happy that you're doing this. I will not say what he used to say about you in Taylor Hall. That like the letters between us. St. Vincent the Grenadines celebrates its 34th anniversary of independence on Sunday. I must tell you as an aside, that is the age I have stayed at all my life, so it's appropriate. I was once traveling in a plane when I was reading Deepak Chopra, and he says that there are two things you can count with. One is the chronological, and one what you decide you are. So I decided I was 34. I have remained so ever since. Everyone says to me, you have not changed. I agree with them. And so there it is, unrepentant on that issue. And today, At the central bank, as we do in all our countries, we raise the flag at a small but moving ceremony, which we have on the independence of all our member countries. I must confess that I'm always touched by the first verse in the chorus of our anthem in St. Vincent. St. Vincent, land so beautiful, with joyful hearts we pledge to thee. Our loyalty and love we vow to keep you ever free. What aid the future brings, our faith will see us through. May peace reign from shore to shore, and God bless and keep us true. I'm always profoundly moved by these statements. The concept of nationhood for the microstates of the OECS is not easy to comprehend or defend in an international community, an environment of such great complexity and increasing uncertainty. The fact that we have managed to survive thus far with our democratic traditions intact, and the rule of law, our respect for the rights and freedoms enshrined in the United Nations Charter, comes as a great surprise to many. It is not a surprise to those of us who understand our people and their history. Our concern is more that we have not fulfilled to date the tremendous potential that we have. We now have, following the global recession which started in 2008, the greatest challenge of our modern history, and our freedom to choose our own path since our independence. The choices we make now will determine the outcomes that will be with us for years to come. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the OECS countries, we have an opportunity to astound the regional international community with what we can achieve by working together and sharing our many strengths. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines in particular, you can see a basic pattern emerging. Access to the international community through communication technology and an international airport, and the tremendous effort being put into the education of Vincentians. The people who look at these things just in passing don't understand the fundamentals of what this is. It is interesting how you can sum these things up in a particular way. There is a quotation from Benjamin Franklin which aptly describes the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It says, humanity falls into three classes: those who are immovable, those who are movable, and those who move. And the movement in this country has been very satisfactory to a lot of us. When its efforts are joined with the other leaders of the currency union, we have seen why we've been able to withstand the global crisis so far. There's a lot more to do, but with our collective efforts, we will succeed. As there's a saying that goes, most of the things worth doing in the world had been declared impossible before they were done. Let me just make a few more remarks on the situation itself. St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the OECS countries have really three epochs in their history, from adult suffrage to independence, which was not easy for us because we were left alone by the bigger countries in the region, and we struggled through that period, almost like lost sheep. Then we got to independence, and then there's some independence to the global crisis, where we also had to struggle. In the post-global crisis, we have to use the Latin phrase, quo vadis. Where are we going to? There are different scenarios that we can look at. One, that the global economy remains flat with current growth rates, high levels of unemployment, and sovereign debt. And in the OECS, no change in our political systems or economic policies. Two, the global economies do not reach pre-crisis levels of growth and employment, where the OECS affects substantial changes in policy and in the economy. And three, the global economy undergoes substantial structural change and reduces imbalances, and the OECS economies become more flexible and adaptive. After we look at those scenarios, we are really faced with four possibilities, given the policy choices we make. We have to make the right policy choices. One, we can become failed or failing states. Two, we can go through what you call bare-bone survival. Three, we can make moderate progress. But all what we should really strive for is a socio-economic transformation of these countries. Based on the nature of what is to be declared today, that is a national plan going out to 2025, we really have to be very practical in this case and realistic about what we face. We have to look at our current and potential resources. We have to look at the constitutional political regimes that we have. We have to look at the socio-cultural environment, the policy framework and architecture we're going to work in, and the technical administrative capacities. And we have to remember very realistically that we are small states and that there are limits to what we can do. But limits in the physical sense not mean limits in ingenuity and creativity. And so we have to proceed to analyze our resources, to see if we can make common cause as we are doing with our other colleagues in the OECS. And number 5 on your things, Laura, speaks to regional integration. And I am happy to say that in terms of the regional integration movement, you can always count on St. Vincent and the Grenadines to be the first to implement the things that come out in the treaty. I think, Prime Minister, here you deserve the commendation. So, in this business, someone always has to lead. And leadership can come from different directions. It doesn't always come from the top. But luckily in the OECS, we now have a number of seasoned leaders who can lead us into this new millennium. But in conclusion, I would like to say that these efforts that I'm attending in the OECS speak to the fact that we are not taking things for granted. A lot of people might not see the pattern in what we are doing, but I can assure you there is a pattern in what we are doing, both at the state level and at the regional level. And if we stick together to make these collective decisions based on good analysis and good collective decision making, we will make it for the next 30 to 34 years. I thank you very much. I'm very happy to hear you.
Thank you very much, So Dwight. The next person I'm going to introduce is a very interesting man. He, man who has taught carbon economics, who has critiqued it, who has researched it. There's one very interesting thing that he taught that I remember. He said that if you're on campus, you ought not to date anybody on the 2nd or 3rd floors because you shouldn't date higher than you can jump. That was 25 years ago, so he could deny it if he wants to. I don't think he remembers me hardly to remembering what he said. Rudy Matthias was telling me just now that that's long enough for me to make the joke and get away with it. Former Dean of Social Sciences, University of the West Indies, and a consultant, Mr. Clement Cotton. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm happy I didn't have to jump, or else I would have needed a walking stick. Prime Minister, colleagues, just let me start by saying that both Prime Minister Ralph Everard Gonzalez, a.k.a. Gonzi from Block D Taylor Hall, and Dwight Venner are my brethren of 46 years. We go back from our student days on campus, and in fact, I retired on September 30th. After 39 years, I nearly said of wage slavery on the plantation, but let me say, after 39 years of working at the University of the West Indies, teaching and researching, I am honored that the first act in public that I will be performing is to participate in this launching. I am deeply honored, and I am proud to be a part of this exercise. When I arrived here about an hour ago, I was met with a program, and Laura Anthony Brown said to me, you have to make some remarks. All I will say is that Gonzi's modus operandi transmits to his staff. First of all, let me commend Laura Anthony Brown and the staff of the Central Planning Division for producing a very important document. I want to highlight, though, that this document is not a mere technical academic document. This document is not merely a document written by technicians. This document comes out of a democratic process where the technical persons had meetings all across the island with various sectors, with various groups, and also meetings across the diaspora. The planning process in any country, especially small, open, developing countries, or small island developing states like St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that process is very critical. And it ranges from the contextual analysis, through an assessment of resources, through the preparation of the plan, through its implementation, and an area which is often not carefully implemented, that is the review. The plan, as you would note, focuses primarily on the human development of the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and more broadly, its diaspora. There is identified in the plan a number of fundamental challenges, and I urge you to read Chapter 4, because Chapter 4 in the plan contextualizes the situation in which the plan has been prepared and is to be implemented. Among the challenges, of course, and Sir Dwight touched on this, the high vulnerability of countries such as St. Vincent and the Grenadines to external shocks such as global economic crises and vulnerability in oil prices. I recently attended a lecture in Jamaica where the presenter, who is an expert in forestry, introduced the concept of peak oil supply, indicating that by his own calculations, the oil production, oil supply internationally is peaking, and we have to recognize and plan for its decline. And therefore, it's very important in the context of a plan for a small island developing state that the vulnerability to global economic crisis and oil prices has been identified. Another element which is important in my view is the role of the private sector. Throughout the region, our private sector, in my own opinion, has not maximized its contribution to the region's economic growth. But there are a number of explanations for this, and therefore, in seeking to strengthen the private sector's capacity to produce output, to generate employment, to develop linkages, this plan has identified the way forward for a private-public sector partnership to enhance the growth and development of the country. Of course, among the younger generation and those who pretend to be young by either dyeing their hair or balding their head, no offense meant it to some of my dear friends here, but it's not an easy road. It's not an easy road. In my own assessment, the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines have the strength and the capacity to implement successfully the goals and objectives of the plan. I think, given the mobilization process, given the democratic process in which the plan was prepared and determined, success will relate to popular participation across all strata in the society. When I was here for the launching of the plan, I made it, to use a term of a politician of the Caribbean, pellucidly clear that as far as I'm concerned, any plan must be for the people of the country, not for any particular strata, not for any particular tribe, not for any particular elements of geographical or other location. And therefore, I want to stress here that having participated in the plan collectively, and I was very concerned about being named the term consultant, because I have a friend who says consultants are those who really don't have a job and put up a title to make people think they have a job. But I must say that I was happy and genuinely participated in this exercise. I must say further, although the memory of my two brethren may have deserted them, that I was an honorary member of the first OECS Student Association at the Mona campus. So I feel at home, I feel comfortable in the Eastern Caribbean, I feel happy, I feel honored. And to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, here is an excellent opportunity to implement a successful plan which will enhance the human growth and development of all of your people. Once again, congratulations to all persons responsible for the preparation of the plan, and I wish the country every success, and may I also wish you all blessings as you celebrate the 34th anniversary of independence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Croton. Ladies and gentlemen, we now will have the feature address. Let me just tell you that the Prime Minister before this was in the States, in Martinique, in Barbados, and even before that, he was away. A tough life, indeed. I think he just got off of a plane and came here. But we know his resilience and stamina is legendary. And I shall now invite the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to address us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, colleagues at the head table, the cabinet and parliamentary brothers and sisters, and your excellencies, and from the Caribbean Development Bank, and public servants and senior public officers, invited guests, and members of the media, and the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines who are listening to us broadly on the radio. I would say that there are many comments which I can make about Sir Dwight and Professor Clement Croton, but I would leave them for another occasion when the more informal gathering. Clement, you don't have to appear so nervous. He's sitting at the edge of his chair. The end of his chair. We'll talk about that elsewhere. I want to begin by reading the foreword which I wrote in January of this year to the plan. St. Vincent and the Grenadines Development Plan 2013 to 2025 has been elaborated around a specific set of strategic goals, objectives, and targets so as to facilitate and guide the optimal improvement of the quality of life for all Vincentians. That is in a nutshell what we are about here. I'll read it again. The development plan has been elaborated around a specific set of strategic goals, objectives, and targets so as to facilitate and guide the optimal improvement of the quality of life for all Vincentians. I chose the words very carefully because each of them is pregnant with meaning. I went on to say this: the development plan is premised on the workings of an economy in which the private sector, the cooperative sector, and the state have efficacious complementary roles as part of a mixed economy. The practical policy signposts are determined by the sensible criteria of efficiency, fairness, sustainability, and appropriateness in a small, vulnerable, multi-island economy. Accordingly, this development plan is conceived in a flexible, though focused way, but not possessed of the rigidities historically associated with such exercises in centrally planned economies. So, if anyone takes up this plan and critiques it on the basis that it is largely a framework provided by the state for the socio-economic development of the country, and to delineate some broad set of goals and objectives and targets to facilitate and guide that development, that the plan, if it is critiqued, that it doesn't provide a lot of details as to what other sectors would be doing other than how the state is fashioning the framework in this partnership. It is because it is not a centrally planned regime, not a centrally planned economy in which the state has control over the levers of foreign direct investment and of domestic investment and what is possible in all the sectors in a specific time frame or what is likely to be accomplished. What you can say in the plan, you will go to attract direct foreign investment, and you will set out the principal areas in which you would seek to attract the investment, and what you would do to assist in the development of the domestic private sector, working with the cooperative sector and the state. I want the point to be clear. This is not the Soviet Union, nor indeed East Germany or Cuba, particularly Cuba in a more pristine, centrally planned economic phase. This is a plan which has to take account of the realities of our own economic structures and systems. So if you expect detailed predictions or plans for what different sections of the private sector would be doing, you're not going to get that here. What you're doing is to set the frame and the broad policies which would be required to have the optimal development. I go on to say This development plan takes account of earlier comprehensive and sectoral planning efforts in St. Vincent and Grenadines. Thus, it does not begin with a blank page. Indeed, the plan reflects thinking which has been evident in the 12 national budgets which the successive administrations under my leadership have delivered over the past 12 years thus far, since March 2001. Equally too, fresh ideas and methodologies have emerged out of the process of shaping this development plan and have found their way into the final, quote-unquote, final product. Even so, a development plan of this kind possesses a living, dynamic framework in which ongoing alterations are inevitable broadly and in its more detailed matrices. It's not cast in concrete. You provide a framework, you give it focus, but you provide, it has a sufficient flexibility which permits amendments, alterations as the circumstances do admit. This you would expect is how practical people conduct their affairs in relation to basic criteria of efficiency, fairness, sustainability, and appropriateness. Numerous persons have left their mark on this plan. Central to its preparation have been the Director of Planning, Mrs. Laura Anthony Brown, and her excellent staff. They were aided by Professor Claremont Curtin of the University of the West Indies, Jamaica, and Dr. Wendell Samuel, a Vincentian economist at the International Monetary Fund. On behalf of the government and people of St. Vincent and Grenadines, I thank all who have been engaged in the making of the St. Vincent and Grenadines Development Plan, 2013 to 2025. Let us now get to work assiduously at implementing it. That is what I said. Now, I am absolutely sure that where this plan is, when we are doing a review of it as we're going along, and even today, if I were to be at a seminar to discuss it, to assess it critically, I am sure that I will have a series of critical comments about it. And it would be strange if the very drafters of the plan do not have critical comments about this or that issue. It is not that what is here is not a proper and appropriate and sensible frame for socioeconomic advancement. It is that areas of emphasis may shift and the formulations which you may have in 6 months' time may well be different. It is not that it is elastic. It is focused but flexible. It cannot be rigid. For example, even in the presentation of the data, I would have liked to have seen data right up to 2013. But I know if that was done, they weren't going to finish it for today. And it would be put off until next year. Not that the up-to-date data would have changed the underlying trends which the plan captures and to which the plan makes certain proposals and posits certain strategic goals and reference points. Similarly, we have to acknowledge that the plan, and no such plan for a people, a government, could be a thesis on development theory, if you want to read those. There are many books published on them. There are many learned doctoral dissertations. This is a document for an activist government and a committed people to a set of goals and strategies. And we have a range of specific things which we are to do and which we set about to do. You would find when you read it, there are ideas which may require further elaboration. Let's begin. And what I'm about to say here is applicable to any country in the OECS, indeed to Barbados. And if we come from Barbados and come to the OECS, I raise this question. The social democratic model of socioeconomic development, initiated by Errol Barrow in Barbados, and more or less perfected by successive Barbadian governments, which came to maturation under the leadership of Owen Arthur. And I put that there because when you're inside of something, you don't quite see it the same way. And it is broadly the same frame which Ebenezer Joshua Milton Cato, Sir James Mitchell, sought to fashion in a different set of circumstances, but also circumstances which are not too dissimilar. "5 years of economic battering by casino capitalism externally, and the consequential fallout in banks and insurance companies in our area. Have put that particular model under extreme stress. The question at a large philosophical and theoretical level is this: is such a model, as initiated, perfected, and led to maturation, and which has now been battered for 5 years, can that model be sustained? And if it can be, in what form and shape it can be sustained, and what adjustments, alterations, or structural changes are required to that model to achieve the same objective of lifting optimally the quality of life of the people. Now, I have sought to raise that question repeatedly in recent years. I've put it in different ways and forms and said the different emphases which have informed different kinds of developments in the economic policy making, from the caricatured industrialization by invitation of Arthur Lewis, to Demas's special emphasis on small size and the necessity and desirability for a particular kind of integration, to the New World writers who have emphasized the need to have alterations in the relationship between the metropole and the hinterland being our own countries. There have even been socialist experiments of one kind or another, some guided by Marxism, some by Fabian socialism, or an advanced form of social democracy. And at each particular stage in our evolution, we have seen, to a greater or lesser degree, each of those approaches having made some contribution. Cutting across them, however, in the first crisis which emerged in the 1980s, there was the famed structural adjustment program of the IMF. And then a little later, when the model was puttering along, with growth rates falling, though not falling to the extent that induced by casino capitalism and the crisis, we got another something out of Washington called the Washington Consensus. Structural adjustment with good governance. Because by then, centrally planned regimes of Soviet Union and Eastern Europe had fallen, and therefore the Washington Consensus, a new one, was saying that you could accommodate good governance as a feature, because they no longer wanted to tolerate the Pinochets of this world, because he was anti-communist, but definitely totalitarian and undemocratic. But once the great beast had fallen, they began to make a genuflection to another dimension. And they threw in some poverty reduction for it. Nowadays, I see they're grouping the same Washington Consensus for a different approach, that we must not look just at the economic simplicity, we must look at the political economy, which many of us have been talking about all the time, but they come to it from a narrower perspective. Because we have always known, we didn't need them to tell us that, we have always known that the economy consists not just of an aggregate of profits and rents and money and taxes. It consists of real flesh and blood people behind those categories. And behind profits, or entrepreneurs, or used to be called capitalists. Behind rents, or landlords. And behind salaries and wages of workers. And behind money and taxes is the state, democratic or otherwise. And therefore, the interaction between all those elements must be taken into account if you're doing anything. But what has happened over the recent years, and you notice that I've spoken about Arthur Lewis. I've spoken about the New World Group, Beckford, Girvan, Thomas, Lloyd Bess, and the like. Talked about Dimas. But in the more recent discussions, the universities have succumbed either to structural adjustment or structural adjustment plus the governance with a little bit of poverty alleviation thrown in. And they have come to us from the Washington Consensus as the answer. And now the political economy, spice and the dash. What this plan is seeking to do is to devise a framework which is homegrown, which is taking the rich tradition of our intellectual heritage in the region, taking account of what we have been seeking to do. You'll see references to the 8-point stabilization and growth plan, which we have fashioned at the Monetary Council. To say to ourselves that we ought to be the intellectual masters in our own house, because it is from that that self-mastery emerges. Otherwise, metaphorically, we get Kentucky Fried Chicken. Something of a fast food variety, and a change with the whims and fancies of whatever objectives there are in Washington, Beijing, or anywhere else. So, there are many large questions which are not explored here. I give you a glimpse of some of the thinking which is behind the fashioning of what you will see in this quite small document. And it is an attempt to do something which comes out from us. I tried in 2009 to do something homegrown with the governance. I was given a kick in the butt in the constitutional reform. Many of you here would have voted against it, either because you didn't understand it or because the politics wasn't right. But that is what we were attempting to do from the governance standpoint. We are seeking to do something in the socio-economic sphere to build a homegrown consensus as to where we should be going. And this is what this is about. There's been a lot of time where they're discussing it. And in this one, the politicians have not been out front. Now, we have put down our marker. We as a people have put down our marker in consensus. Because as Laura Anthony Brown tells you, that there's been a wide range in discussion, and we brought experts from outside to suggest to us a body of ideas which we may be able to incorporate in it, and drawing our own experiences and on our own condition. If someone wants to challenge the bases, the premises, and this outcome document, I am willing to engage in a debate on that subject. And don't treat it flippantly, this plan. Treat it as a serious effort, homegrown, where we are engaged as a civilized people in an act of self-mastery. If you have another perspective, another set of ideas, different to these, sure. But I will wager that whatever happens in the political sphere over the next 12 years, that anybody who comes to the crease has to take guard with this. You have to take guard with this. If this tells you that you have to bat on middle and leg, that's where you have to bat. You can't go and bat outside of the off stump. Don't let anybody else fool you about that. This is the consequence of this. This is a consensus for socio-economic development. I'm not telling you it is a blueprint. But when you go to the next election and you see the manifestos of the two major political parties, if you don't find the ideas here reflected in both of them, well, you know one of them wrong. And I will wager to you, you'll find them reflected, both manifestos would be reflecting what is in here because they constitute a consensus. We have had too much unserious discussion by people who don't understand a number of these kinds of questions, and people who are just too glib without a sufficiency of reflection. Both two speakers before me address some questions which I want to just touch on briefly, which are here. And you'd read the section on energy, and you'll see the framework. Energy is required for living and production. A stable supply, high quality, and at a very competitive price. If we continue as we are in the region, and I'm talking now the OECS, Barbados, and everywhere else, save and except Trinidad and Tobago, if we continue as we are going, we are not going to solve one of the major impediments to serious economic and social advancement in this country or in this region. The price of energy is just too high for us to be as competitive as we ought to be in the production of goods and services in the international marketplace. You can twist however you want. That is a reality. There are individuals who may want to sell you a bill of goods, as some snake oil salesmen tend to do, that you can tinker with the base price and with the fuel surcharge. You can twist it whichever way you want. For you to have any sustainability and reliability in the delivery of electricity to you, the price is around 40 US cents per kilowatt hour. that is just simply too high. By the time the hotelier or the manufacturer pays his electricity bill, you have to make savings elsewhere of a tremendous kind on wages and efficiencies in the delivery of your product and efficiency in the government service and also in the private sector. That is the reality. Don't let anybody come and tell you that you must change the ownership from public to private. Because the IMF came down and gave that advice to Dominica, to Grenada, to St. Vincent. Dominica and Grenada bought that advice. I didn't buy it. Their plans need investment which they don't have. And their price to the consumer per kilowatt hour is higher than 40 US cents. In the case of Grenada, 45 and rising, and in the case of Dominica is 43 US cents. Now, in short, please listen to people who have studied this problem and don't be sidetracked by phantom options or solutions. We can go with renewables, and we have to go. The game changer for us is geothermal, because of the reserves of geothermal energy which we have, and properly developed, and if it's in accordance with plan, may reduce the cost by as much as 1/2. It requires tremendous capital investment, of course, and which is something the state and the private sector, certainly in the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, have to address on an ongoing basis. And we have, it appears, two good partners, Emera and Reykjavik Geothermal. And possibilities for maybe, depending on all host of other things, we don't count the chickens before they hatch in respect of export of energy to Barbados. Barbados imports annually $750 million Barbadian dollars of energy products, over 1 billion Eastern Caribbean dollars. You have to find that money. They have economies of scale in their electricity which we do not have. Their peak demand is 160 megawatts, roughly 8 times our peak demand. They have a terrain which is more hospitable than ours. Please, let's be serious and analyze what we have and what we are doing and where, how we can go. There's solar. Solar is extraordinarily expensive. Now, if you can deliver solar, maybe in the region to the electricity company of about 15, 16, 17 US cents per kilowatt hour, you may be in business, because for a small electricity company, you have certain fixed overhead costs. These are practical matters. The plan doesn't deal in detail of what I'm talking about, but the plan sets the framework which we must pursue to address those questions. And I illustrate the argument about the connection to the plan with a practical problem. You know, VinLink has just spending $3 million on solar energy. The answer to that is whether the $3 million, that is wise investment. The savings which you would be making on the fuel surcharge by investing $3 million is very marginal. You will need to invest in excess of $40 million to get a reduction of about 5% in your energy bill. And as it might be said in some circumstances, the dance can't pay for the light. But the critical issue, when you show you're spending that money, is that globally, because of the question of climate change and the need for measures for adaptation and mitigation, because of the amount of greenhouse gases which go into the atmosphere, there is a public policy internationally to assist countries, developing countries, which have a policy in going forward in this direction. So you put your money where your mouth is as a strategic option, not that that particular expenditure brings down the price of the electricity in the short term. Because you need to establish yourself as a government, as a people who want to go to renewables. Same thing when you go to wind and so on and so forth. I illustrate the point. The second question, regional integration. It is clear that we have not integrated sufficiently our economies. We are making some progress, but casino capitalism has overtaken us. How do we deepen our integration of our economies while not alienating our people in the respective territories by having governmental arrangements which appear to be too distant and empowering bureaucrats more than they ought reasonably to be empowered? That is the kind of conundrum which we are addressing. After all, if we have a deeper integration, not every single decision would be you will come to Ralph about or whoever is prime minister. It wouldn't. There would be other loci of power, other institutional arrangements in the distribution of power regionally. But you have to deepen the integration instruments, because you cannot build a social democratic model within the four walls of each of these small countries. And you have to link it with an international solidarity beyond your own immediate regional borders. It's clear. You wouldn't find that language takes as crisply in this plan. It speaks of cooperation and union and advantages from activist diplomacy. That is the language of the public servant, which I say, okay, let that language remain, but we know what it means. the Nevis, Dominica, and St. Vincent are exploring actively geothermal energy. Yet, there is no serious discussion between Dominica, St. Vincent, and Nevis on the question of geothermal energy. None. But look at this. Emera, which owns Barbados Light and Power, is in St. Vincent with Reykjavik Geothermal and would be the producer and seller of geothermal to the state-owned electricity company. In Dominica, Emera has just purchased the electricity company, but it is not producing geothermal, so it would be a purchaser in Dominica of somebody else producing the geothermal energy. But here, it would be the seller to a different purchaser, the state. It would understand the issue well on both sides of this thing. But we ourselves, because they are one integrated company. I'm not making a point against Emera. I am just making the point about where we have not done what we are supposed to do sufficiently. Simple things. The terms of reference for the environmental impact assessment for geothermal in Dominica should be on the energy desk in the office of the Prime Minister in St. Vincent and the Grenadines without we asking for it, and vice versa. We do many things good still regionally, but we are not doing them as well as we should be doing. Remember what I just said about regional integration? There are countries outside of the Caribbean which are redefining the nature of our regional integration arrangements without we properly understanding. My brother, Mitchell, you're from the Bahamas? St. Lucia, oh. But the Bahamas and Haiti are not part of the single market in CARICOM. But yet, they are signatories to the Economic Partnership Agreement between CARIFORUM and the European Union. So Bahamas doesn't have a trading regime set out with St. Vincent and the Grenadines under the CARICOM arrangements. But yet, we have one set out in the EPA because they can't give to Europe terms which are more favorable than they'll give to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That's happening there. And there will evolve a pool of regional integration. While we have our broad regional integration, I predict that we'll have a pool in the north, northwest. And what is the size of that pool? Please, we have to think strategically, which is what this plan is helping us to do. Dominican Republic is nearly 10 million people. Haiti, roughly 10 million people. Remember, Dominican Republic is part of CARIFORUM and in the relationship just as we are with the European Union. Bahamas is just over 300,000 people. Jamaica is 2.8 million people. And as the liberalization process advances in Cuba, as it will further advance, another 11 million people there. Cuba is going to enter that process, you know. As sure as the sun rises tomorrow. It wouldn't enter the process tomorrow because it will take a little while, but the changes which are taking place are irreversible. And Look at this population sizes up there. And I could bet you anything that when that happens, the United States of America will give a special dispensation to Puerto Rico to enter that particular process. Puerto Rico is nearly 4 million people. So that's one pole which would be emerging. But we are down here. We have the OASIS Economic Union. It is clear to me that for the Barbados model of social democracy to be made viable, it has to strengthen its regional economic arrangements with the OECS and maybe find some relationship with our economic union. How many persons, and is my old warrior comrade Renrick there? We discuss these things from time to time. You take Martinique. We don't think of Martinique as somewhere where we should get closer ties with. Why? Because Martinique is a French colony. France is responsible for its external affairs and defense and one or two other areas, but they have a greater degree of autonomy. Martinique has a population of just over 400,000 people. Martinique's population is larger than Barbados' own by 130,000. There is no country in the OECS which is as large as Martinique. Martinique is more than twice the size of Barbados. It is 1,100 square kilometers. It has a per capita GDP in the region of $25,000 US. It is part of our Caribbean civilization, but the political institutional arrangements in Martinique are different than ours. So what is wrong with that? Do we pause to think? There's a European civilization. Britain has a monarchical system of government, which is a parliamentary democratic system. France is a republican system. The fact that they speak different languages is neither here nor there. They come from the same ideas of the Age of Enlightenment. Representative government, separation of powers, not having theocratic government, keeping religion and the state reasonably at bay. France and Britain are engaged in a single market. But the colonies and former colonies, which are next door, we don't have nothing to do with one another. Huh? And when I go to Martinique, fellas think I gone on a joyride. I gone to do serious business on behalf of serious people. We have to get them in as associate members of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States and deal with a series of functional cooperation measures. We can't be, as Dwight and I have always discussed this, the OECS can't be in a pristine, splendid isolation. Though we must make sure that our own peculiarities and our own sets of concerns are fully taken into account. Like, for instance, we ought not to be unreasonably swamped by financial institutions out of Trinidad and Tobago in your period, when part of the reason for the collapse of some of the problems which we have had is because of the strength of financial institutions like CLICO and BICO in our own jurisdiction. All those things are against the backdrop of what we have here. If you go and look through the plan, you will see the overarching goals of, we have a high and sustained levels of economic growth, reduce unemployment and poverty levels, improve physical infrastructure and environmental sustainability, high levels of human and social development, a peaceful and secure nation, a technologically advanced workforce, a deep sense of national pride and cultural renaissance, and regional integration. Those are the overarching goals. I don't want to go through the long-term strategies which we have, the 5 strategic goals, and to go through them in detail. But you'll find that the plan is crafted with all of these in mind. And then you will see at the end of the plan, there is a planning matrix and other information. This is not the first plan we have had. If you look at the plan, you will see that there have been plans since between 1946. The last one was 1995. Not because I've been involved in this one. This plan of 2013 to 2025 is a far superior plan to the plan of 1995. The simple reason, as those who are involved in that, and anybody who wants to read it would see, there were a set of chapters sectorally, in fact ministry-wide. It looked as though it was not so much a plan, a development plan, as just a recitation by each ministry what they were doing and what they had in mind to do. A kind of result indicators you find in the estimates for any current year and some other possible things. Entirely different business, and it didn't have a coherence. This one has a coherence. I want you to notice the way in which we have done our work. Poverty reduction was a very central issue in our first term and still is. We had an interim poverty reduction strategy. We followed it. And when in 2008, when Laura Anthony Brown came to me and we were discussing it, and we decided that, look, let us test what we have been doing. And Laura said to me, she said, Prime Minister, this period is a difficult period now to do your assessment. 2008 into 2009, you know what had happened? The economic downturn. I said, my dear sister, let us see what it says. If it says that we have been spinning top in mud, we're only fooling ourselves, we'll take a fresh guard. We did an assessment. It turns out that we had made remarkable progress, both on the front of poverty, but more extraordinarily in relation to indigence. The same thing as we see the Food and Agricultural Organization, they had assessed us in terms of our levels of our nutrition, question of our nourishment. And then, arising out of that, she said to me, well, we should do an update of that interim strategy and have a full-fledged strategy. Now, when I heard that they had given, the contract had been awarded to an entity from outside of the Caribbean. I was very upset. And I said, you will come back to talk to me about this, and I will not tell you I told you so. When she showed me the first draft, I said, that's what we're paying for. You see, the staff was overworked. And I advised her, I said, if it is your determination, let us terminate this, because this thing is incurably bad. And that we ourselves can do it better. Of course, it is a terrible weakness of the University of the West Indies, after half a century of the Faculty of Social Sciences and some nearly 60 years of the Institute of Social and Economic Research, Dwight, there wasn't an agency in the university which we can go to where they can put a bid in. There's one now, yes, after 50, 60 years. No, I mean, so that is what happens in practical terms. The point I want to make to you is that the government has a rational, scientific mode of proceeding. The same thing we did with the education sector plan, which is now being, a new updated education sector plan is being dealt with. The same thing with the health sector plan. The same thing with the National Agriculture Plan, including the food production plan. These things have to be done properly and scientifically, because unless we have these signposts, and everybody in a senior position in government and every minister of government would be expected to read this. And every senior public servant would be expected to read this. And I am hoping that there will be seminars and there will be further education and so forth. Because if we just do this and say this is Ralph and Laura business, it's not going no way. Dwight spoke about faith in our national anthem, and that is true. But the words of the national anthem assumes that we are, and declares that we are a Christian people, believe in God. And therefore, we know well the book of James. Faith without works is nothing. Faith without deeds doesn't mean anything. Faith is made complete, made perfect with works. And our faith will see us through. Yes. But not just any recitation about anything. We have to work. And no progressive society has ever been built without hard and smart work. And a view has gone abroad in this country, in some places, in some hills and valleys, in some of the watering holes and taverns, that leisure and pleasure and nice time are the preferred options. Well, to have leisure, to have pleasure, and to have nice time, you have to produce goods and services. for your consumption at home and for people overseas. You have to do it. Of course, we have to have leisure, pleasure, and nice time, because it is in the nature of human beings. But we have to have the balance, and it has to be on the foundation of hard and smart work. We have to be productive. We have to have new attitudes to labor and production, and that is inside of here too. I know when I talk like that, there are some people who say, well, he's a slave driver. They say that I make public servants sick because I want them to work beyond the call of duty. I don't ask one public servant to do anything what I, at 67 years of age, is not prepared to do. We have to work hard and smart, and we have to be productive. Everybody has said that about this plan. Unless we do that to implement this, our exercise here today would have been a ritual. A simple ritual without any lasting significance, save and except for the historians to write that we had a fantastic launch. We have to get this thing done properly. They say people work very hard and they can't work harder because they would only work harder if you give them more money. Well, our wages need to rise. No question about it. My own included. But the point is this: we afford what we can afford. And we have to do it for ourselves and our children. Because I tell you this, the last 5 years we have sustained enormous pressure. And we have kept things going. And in the process, we have done tremendous advances in physical infrastructure, including building the Argyle International Airport, which would be completed around this time next year to be opened, which would make a major difference to tourism and also to the exports of goods, including agriculture and fisheries. The IMF principal economist, Mr. Blanchard, has advised that it is unlikely that the world economy will rebound before the end of 2016. That's another 3 years. 14, 15, 16. And when it rebounds, it's going to take another year or so for it to have a knock-on effect on us. Positive knock-on effect. It means, therefore, you can't have captain and crew who sailing under sealed orders and with no compass. You hear me? One of the things about third terms have a liberating effect on a leader, that he can talk his mind freer than otherwise. but remain nevertheless grounded both in the sense of accountability, to be responsible and responsive, but to speak truths in a straightforward way, which every household knows what I'm saying. It's absolutely correct. It is true that there are persons who are unemployed. But if a young lady is unemployed in the house, why is it that her mother or her granny gets up before her to make breakfast and to make breakfast for her, and is only at 9:30 she rousing herself? These are things which, in homes, people complain that it shouldn't happen. Why can't I talk about it? Because I had to look for votes from some lazy people? And those who are not pulling their weight know that I'm right, and they're glad that I'm saying what I'm saying, because they want somebody to speak truth on this. They want a politician who to tell them how things are. And we have to work harder and smarter. It is vital that it be done. We have done well as a people. We are in the middle, we are in the high level of human development, the high level of human development in accordance with the HDI, the Human Development Index. All of these countries in the OECS, extraordinary. In Africa, 32 of the 54 states, including 12 which export oil, are in the low human development category. And the reason why we have done well is because by far the vast majority of our people are hardworking and committed, and daily in their homes they get up and want to make an honest living. The vast majority. And there's a small minority. Most of them are good-natured people whom we have to urge to get up and do a little better. There are some who don't want to do nothing, a very tiny minority. They don't want to do anything at all. They decide that they're going to live off the fat of the land. You know you don't like them in your homes, and you ask them, get up and go and do something. We have to make the same point nationally. And I believe that the vast majority of our people who work hard and smart would respond to an appropriate leadership, which is demanding, which is asking, which is urging, and which is saying, we are not about inspiring. We want to bring out, to draw out what is good and productive and noble in everybody, and to draw out with their own effort what is good and noble in them, which sometimes they themselves do not as yet know that they possess. That is for the implementation of this plan, which I have the honor as Prime Minister to launch today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Gonsalves. We must work harder and smarter, and we must be the intellectual master in our own house. I hope that most of us would get a copy of the plan, read it, digest it, so that you'll know what happens in the next 12 or so years in this country as far as the consensus of economic development is concerned. We now ask the projects officer in the Department of Planning, Ms. Nerissa Pitt, to move a vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Sir Dwight Venner, the IMF Resident Representative for the ECCB countries, Mr. Wayne Mitchell, the Director of Planning, Mrs. Laura Anthony Brown, Consultant to the Plan, Mr. Clement Curtin, Mr. Chairman, most valued invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to give the vote of thanks on this momentous occasion. On behalf of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I extend a hearty thank you to all the speakers for doing their part in emphasizing the importance of the National Economic and Social Development Plan as a guide in charting the way forward for the future economic and social development of our beloved country. A heartfelt thank you is also extended to the European Union for financing all the activities surrounding the National Economic and Social Development Plan. I thank too all the consultants, ministries and departments of government and quasi-government institutions and enterprises providing helpful guidance and pertinent information. The embassies and missions for organizing consultations with overseas Vincentian, and anyone else who contributed in any way, we thank you sincerely for your input. I want to say a special thank you to Ms. Jacinta Fergus and her team for providing us with the facilities required for streaming this event online. Finally, I cannot say thank you enough to the Central Planning Division for their willingness and tireless efforts in ensuring that the plan was a success. After all our hard work, we feel a sense of pride in witnessing the launch of this document today. Once again, I thank everyone for attending.
And thank you, Ms. Pitt. I'd like to thank all the listeners to NBC Radio and to Star FM for joining us here today for this particular broadcast. We thank you for coming, and we hope that you have a wonderful day for the rest of the day. I'd just like to announce also that the plan will be on the government website, so once you connect to that, you will get everything. All right, the plan will be on the government website, and you're asked to go there for the rest of it. Thank you very much. Good day.